Thanks, Jade. Um, I'm going to just share my screen. So give me a second here. I hope that you get something out of today's presentation that either helps you or your library um, and moving your plan and your analysis forward. So can everyone see the PowerPoint?
Yes, looks good.
Okay, great. So this slide is the agenda and outcomes from today. I'm going to start with a little bit more about what I do, and then I have a couple polls because I wanted to know a little bit more about you and your strategic analysis background. And then the meat of the presentation is going to be the tools that you can use to analyze your library and your services and your outcomes. And I'll share a couple next steps about what you can do once your analysis has concluded. And then the fun part, the reason why you should stick around is because we're going to work on a group SWOT analysis together. And I'm going to use Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry as our mock analysis subject. And then at the very end, hopefully I have some time for discussion and some resource sharing. So again, my name is Krystal Kakimoto. I'm a liaison librarian at Chaminade University, and I liaise to nursing, Hawaiian Pacific, and business. And I'm also the operations coordinator at Bishop Museum. And a fun fact about me is that GSM, the growth share matrix, is my favorite type of analysis. And my dream for this presentation is at the very end, maybe we can go around and share which type of analysis resonated with you or which type of analysis you're going to try and conduct in your own libraries. So now, this is my scary part. I have some polls. If you don't mind hovering over the QR, we're going to test it out and see if this works. If you hover over the QR, it should take you to the live poll where the first question is, if you don't mind typing in a word or a phrase, a short phrase that comes to your mind when you think about strategic analysis. Okay, I'm seeing some of the words populate. Complicated. I thought that too. I love that someone typed in boring because it can be kind of boring if you're not looking at the right type of analysis tool or you're not thinking about which strategy is the best. Outcomes. Yes, analysis is very outcome based. Data mining. That's really interesting. Transformation. Yeah, analysis can lead to a lot of transformation within your organization. Necessary. Time consuming. That is correct too. I love all of these words. Um, it can be time consuming, also depending on the type of analysis that you conduct. So now the second question is, have you ever participated in a strategic analysis? And I'm kind of trying to capture an analysis for your library. And this is just a yes or no. And once you hit submit, we'll start to see the outcomes populate. I have 3 no's so far and 1 yes. Okay. Now it's changing a little. It's always fun to watch the numbers shift. It's 50-50, 4 and 4, 4 and yes, 4 and no. Okay, this next question is going to be really interesting then is what holds you back from conducting a strategic analysis? For this question, I have 4 options and you can click as many as um, you want. Okay. The answers resonate with me, not enough time. I feel the exact same way because a lot of times you're there getting a display up, helping a student, placing an order, and you kind of think, why would I need to conduct an analysis? Isn't this, it's kind of like the last thing you think of. Not enough money. That's another one. A lot of times administration wants you to do your job, which is what you're there to do. Um, not sure how and other. Maybe at the very end, I'm going to write a little note that we can kind of discuss that other because I'm curious what people think about analysis or what holds them back. Um, So now we're going to start the main portion of this presentation. You might be wondering why these tools are even important, what are the outcomes, and how it can affect your library. And the first thing I want you to remember is that there are numerous tools that capture different types of information. And the tools that I'm going to share in the upcoming slides are a few that I think could be useful in libraries. Some will share strengths or weaknesses or fault points within your organization. Some will bring forward unique characteristics that can be used for marketing. And analysis tools will also shed light on external information, like how intense your competition is, maybe even forecast future events, and also share information on your user needs. The end goal of all of these different types of tools will vary. Some businesses will help to increase operational effectiveness after an analysis, others minimize threats, and others are used to feed a strategic plan. So one of the first types of tools you can use is called the pest analysis. And this analyzes your external environment and your macro environmental factors that affect your library. The outcome from this type of analysis will help you understand the growth or decline and the intensity of your competition within your market. So to conduct your pest analysis, you would go down each letter. P for political, thinking about how much government influence or intervention affects your industry. Think about upcoming legislation and how it affect your library, and also things like the potential for civil unrest. Then you'll go to E, economics, things like inflation, interest rates, even unemployment rates. And then you'll go through S, social, things like population growth, disposable income. If I were doing a pest analysis for Chaminade University, I would think about things like Gen Z's relationship and attitudes towards college degrees, because that would definitely affect academic libraries and even public libraries. Then T, you'll think about technological advancements, automation, even AI. That's the pest analysis. Sometimes there's an L and an E added on. Legal for things like new labor laws, import laws, and environmental that talks about things like natural disasters, pandemics. Also, how consumers get health information. And what I like about that pest analysis is that it's pretty simple. You just go through each letter, do your research, and then share this information with your stakeholders to make your decisions. The thing that you need to remember, though, about a pest analysis is that it's only as good as your inputs. So it's very research heavy, meaning that you have to do a lot of information searching, information gathering, and then organization to make it impactful. The next type of external analysis that you could utilize is called a scenario planning. And this is really commonly used in military intelligence situations. It's also used in business when you're considering a major change or doing something that has a lot of uncertain outcomes. Your goal with the scenario analysis is to create a long-term plan that has a little bit of flexibility built into it with an aim of minimizing the risks to your library. To begin the scenario analysis, what you're going to do first is determine the question that you want to be answered by your analysis. And then you set up the scope and timeline for this different scenarios to run. So maybe you're trying to think about a property that your library or your friends of group wants to acquire, and then you're going to set out 5 different scenarios that will run over the next 5 years to see how they all pan out. Then you'll narrate these different scenarios and you start to see different trends emerge, different risks, uncertainties emerge, and you start to think which will be your most plausible to go with. Once you figure those out, usually it's about 2 or 3, you'll go more in depth for this narration, and then you'll figure out, of course, the risks and how to minimize them. Anything that's uncertain, you'll think of a plan B. Um, Sometimes librarians don't see the need for a scenario plan, but I know that when I worked on Love My Library Day, it was the first type of event of its kind, and there was a lot of things that could go awry. It was also open to the public, so you can see there's a lot of uncertainties. What I did was I ran 3 different scenarios to figure out, okay, if A doesn't work out, we can flow to B, and what you're trying to do is just kind of plan for the unexpected. We also have something called the Porter's 5 forces, and this is another form of external analysis that analyzes your competition and your users. First, you would analyze the horizontal pressures. So the first thing would be threat of new entrants to your market. If the threat is high, then you'd want to be securing your customers quickly. You can think about a public library, for example. Porter's Five works really well with public libraries because you think about the threats to enter the same type of market, maybe booksellers, online retailers, free little libraries. These are all different organizations that can scoop up the same type of market share. And then you're going to analyze the barriers to enter your market. So if the cost to enter the market is high, then you would say that it's a high cost to enter. If you have to maybe pay a lot of investment in land, or you have to pay a lot of money for technological advancement, those are high barriers to entry. And then you'll think about your substitutes. So again, if you think back to the public library and its substitutes, you'll think about, again, bookstores, online retailers, anything that'll put pressures on the public library. Then you'll look at vertical analysis. And the first one you can think about is the bargaining power of your users, their dependency on you. How easy is it for them to switch to new ebook platform? How easy is it for them to get their information or their resources from another institution or an organization? And then finally, your bargaining power of your suppliers. And a lot of times they talk about raw material suppliers, but you can also think about this as your publishers or your vendors. Then we have the SWOT analysis, and the SWOT analysis is very famous. It's one that a lot of people are most familiar with, and this analyzes both your internal analysis or internal and external issues related to your organization or your library. Sometimes it's also called like a situational analysis or a TOES. With this type of analysis, you'll look at four topics: your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and you'll ask meaningful questions to identify that competitive advantage over others. You'll start with your internal factors like your strengths. And these can be thought of as characteristics that gives your company the advantage over others. You'll also think about your weaknesses. These are your disadvantages relative to others in your field. Then you'll move to external factors. You'll think about things that you can exploit. And then your threats. These are things that could bring trouble to your business. And after this analysis is concluded, your next step is to match your strengths with your opportunities. There's a maximize them. So if maybe you're a Hawaiian Pacific serving library institution, you bring on a new librarian who is fluent in Hawaiian. This is obviously an opportunity for you to match this librarian with this user group. Then you'll also want to convert your weaknesses to either strengths, that would be your ideal situation, or you'd want to at least minimize their impact. And then finally, you'll try and figure out ways to control your threats. And again, once I'm done with this overview of the different analysis tools, we'll do that SWOT analysis together. Now we have the GSM, and this is my favorite. It's an internal analysis. And the reason why I feel like the GSM is so beneficial to libraries is because it helps you to analyze your product portfolio. And you can think of your product portfolios, anything that's similar. So I can analyze my programs and look at them, how they're doing productivity wise, where they are in their life cycle. You can also think about things that are either at the peak of their performance or things that need to be retired. You can also do GSMs for your collection, for your services. And GSM is really similar to SWOT in the sense that they both take a matrix shape, but the difference is the GSM analyzes your product lines. So what you're going to do for GSM is look at each of the quadrants independently. The first step would be identify your stars. And the stars are new programs or new services. They're fast growing and very popular, but they require a lot of resources. And when I say resources, this could mean a lot of funding to run them. It could mean staff time to support them. It could also mean a lot of space within your library. And your hope at the end of the day is that your stars will turn into your cows. And cows are something that have low market growth because they've already kind of hit their peak, but they have high market share because they're really popular. They generate excess. And a lot of times in business, they'll say they generate excess cash, which then funds your different product lines. But in libraries, maybe your main goal is to make sure you have a high door count or you have a high circulation rate. So you can think of your cows as supporting whatever outcome you're trying to increase in your library. Then you have question marks. Your question marks are problem children because you're not really sure if they're going to become stars that eventually become hopefully cows or if they just fizzle out and you have to retire them early. With your question marks, they're also going to require a lot of input. They're going to require maybe things like marketing or time or money. And that's giving them enough support to make sure that they have the opportunity to turn into your stars. Finally, you have your dogs, and the dogs are thought of as charitable pets. These are programs or collections or services that might break even. They might be around just because they've been around for a long time, or they might be around just because your library has loyalty to this. At the end of the day, the dogs take whatever excess is generated from your cows and it's using up these resources. So, a lot of times after you do this type of a GSM, you figure out where each of your product lines is in terms of their life cycle. You think whether or not it's important for you to retire your dogs, take that excess funding that they have been using up, incorporate to a different area in your library, or you keep them around. Maybe they're important to your mission, or maybe they're really important to the culture of your campus. We also have something that is called a Vero, and it's another form of an internal analysis. And Vero, I like to tell people, helps you to discover your secret sauce that differentiates you from other libraries. You'll think about your value. This is something that you can exploit to create opportunities. Then you also think about your rarity. You'll think about how many people or however many libraries have access to the same resource that you're tapping. You also think about the imitability and how difficult it is for another person or another library to imitate whatever you're doing. Finally, you think about your organization. And when you think about your organization, a healthy organization will help you to capitalize on whatever resources are there to exploit. So if you have something like a new branch manager or you have a lot of internal employee turnover, these are two negative factors to that organizational rating because there might be instability or low institutional knowledge. And last but not least, we have market segmentation. And market segmentation is really beneficial for libraries because you divide your entire consumer base or your customer base, your group of users into different markets. And then you're able to either create marketing campaigns or create new services or programs to better fit their needs. So the first step would be create your different segments. And this is where you take your entire population. If you're a public library, these are all of the people within your region. If you're at a university, you take your different markets. You segment them out with your students, your faculty, and your staff. And then you think about what makes them unique based on different characteristics, like shared interests or lifestyles or demographics, or could even go as finite or as in detail as the genres that they like to read. Then you target or you market towards them. The goal with this is to think about which segment has the highest rate of market growth. So if I have a segment of my longtime library users who are always in here for story time, who are loyal users to my library, they might not have as much market growth. But then I might look at maybe my commuter students at an academic library. They're not in the library as much. Maybe they're also a different segment. So you can hybridize your segments. And I go, okay, they're not in the library as much. They don't use our resources as much. So maybe there's a possibility to capture them and capture that market. Then the final thing is to think about how you're going to target them. Um, and position whatever resources you're trying to align to them so that they see this and they go, I want to visit the library now. So if I take back my hybrid segment, maybe I figure out my commuter students with students are my highest rate for market growth. I could then open up the library a little earlier, maybe create a keiki friendly program upstairs so the parents can study while they wait for their classes or while they wait to drop their students off for school. What I like about this is you're not only targeting with marketing to promote your library, but then you can also use it as a backwards form of analysis to figure out what needs you're not meeting of your consumers. So once your analysis is done, whatever type you conduct, you might need to present these findings to your decision makers or your stakeholders. And this could be as simple as sharing a document with a narration for your scenario analysis or holding a meeting and a presentation. A lot of times it's just helping your decision makers understand your decision making process and why you decided to put your time, your energy, or your funding towards this decision. The next step will be to organize and set your priorities. This could mean setting an end goal for a program or maybe a strategic analysis as a longer term goal. And also, I like to set evaluation points throughout this because then it'll be this tiny feedback loop where you're making sure that you're on track to make that end goal. And then another thing that I like to also include when I'm setting an analysis is decide whether or not a future analysis is needed. A lot of times, analysis is necessary when something new arises or there's a new question to be asked. But there also might be a situation where you'll want to conduct a similar analysis once your entire goal has been met to make sure that you're still on the right path for future activities. So now I want us to work together on a SWOT analysis for Hogwarts. And if you'd like, you can chat them or you can unmute and we can just work on this together. I set aside about 10 minutes of time for this. So if I was administration at Hogwarts, and the first step would be to look at my internal issues, my strengths, and my weaknesses. So if you're thinking about Hogwarts, you can shout it out or type. What are some of the strengths to Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, in your opinion? Okay, so I'm seeing some of the chats. I think a huge library was one of them. Lots of experience, Kupuna, diversity and talents. Okay, you guys are awesome. Fun stuff to do. Okay, that's good. That's marketing. And I see Andrew has also said lack of confidence in traditional leadership. We might put that as that weakness. Magic, yes. Event relationship with government. Students who question authority. Okay, got a good scope, I think, of some of their strengths. The next step is to think about their weaknesses. And Andrew already hinted at that. They had that past alliance to the dark arts. Are there any other types of weaknesses? Loads of OSHA violations. Yes, I can see that. Um, Another one that I thought of, high turnover rate. Kelly nailed it right on the head. Turnover rate of headmaster that can create instability and a lack of ability to execute long-term projects or programs. Defense against the dark arts teacher. Yes, a difficult position to fill, but a very necessary position to have at this school. So you can see this is a time when you're doing this analysis, a lot of people are spitballing. You're throwing things out, you're seeing what sticks, tradition that keeps them doing the same. Yes, lack of innovation. And clothes from other communities. I agree 100%. A lot of times you think isolation, it can make your traditions stronger, but then you also have to wonder what else is happening on the outside. Affiliation with the author, LGBT. Yes, Andrew. Um, Meta. Kate, we're going to jump now to the opportunities. The difficult thing about this analysis is that we actually don't live in this world. So the fun thing is we get to get a little hypothetical. What are some things that you could see as opportunities within the world of Harry Potter that would relate to Hogwarts? One thing that I was thinking just to get the ball rolling is AI. AI is something new. Activist minded students, opportunity, very smart. I'm writing this down. When these books were written, AI was not a big thing that the public was talking about. So, how would these wizards start to study and understand AI? Dark Lord is gone. Yes, more Muggle. Ooh, that's a really good point, Kelly. It could be opening it up to more Muggle students. World facing real threats means an opportunity for magic. Yes, overlapping these two worlds to solve the larger issues. Another example, imagine quit a game with AI. Hogwarts become a multi-world champion. Yes, it would be an unbelievable game to imagine if Quidditch were played with AI. Fun, but it's hard to wrap your mind around. Okay, now we're going to have to think about the threats, the external factors that put pressure on Hogwarts. Technology. Yep, technology. And then that AI comes right back to my mind. Bias against muggles. True. Even though the Dark Lord is gone, that bias still exists. Anti-woke. Gonna give it a couple more seconds just to make sure that I'm staying on time. Climate change took all the marvelous plants. Me versus them. That's true. I wonder how climate change would affect the world. Author holds kingdom behind a paywall. Yes, that's a big threat. Um, okay, so now you can kind of see nefarious spells. Yes, these are all threats that put a pressure on Hogwarts. Once you're done, you have all of these wonderful ideas laid out in your analysis matrix. You're going to try and connect those weaknesses, or sorry, those strengths with the opportunities. So some of the strengths that we had were magic, were the huge library, research opportunities, lots of kupuna, institutional knowledge, it was also fun. That's a marketing opportunity. And then you look at those opportunities like activist students, more Muggle students, the AI, the technology, and then you try and think how you can link these two things up together. So one thing that I'm thinking right off the bat is the magic, and it's huge. Maybe creating something like a journal club in that huge library with the activist students to put out new information, or lots of kupuna, a lot of talented professors. Maybe they start to create new courses geared towards technology and AI. You're linking this so that you can maximize those opportunities. That next threat was to minimize your weaknesses. So you're trying to think and make plans and almost like now a scenario analysis. Someone mentioned OSHA violations. We need to start minimizing those because those can have long-term ramifications. And I don't know if they'd have lawsuits or losing your accreditation, figuring out who's your next defense against the dark arts teacher, putting out that call to fill that spot, or maybe reformatting that professor's position because there's been so much issues with this. Another thing that someone brought up was the isolation. So if you don't address these weaknesses, these fault lines can get larger and larger over time, entire cracks that starts to crumble your foundation. And then the final thing that you'll do to round out your SWOT analysis is start to narrate things that would halt those threats. You're trying to figure out the best ways to cut these off before they even happen. So that tech, that AI, maybe having that school, that class that talks about AI in the wizarding world. You're also thinking about bias because, as somebody said, there'll be more Muggle students, which was the opportunity, but now they're in Hogwarts, they could be exposed to more bullying. And how do you try and make a plan for this before it even happens? It's hard sometimes, but you can see that I mentioned scenario analysis once before. You can incorporate different types of analysis. You can say, okay, well, I need to figure out a way to preemptively prevent or minimize the effect of the bias against the Muggle students. So I bring in now a scenario plan and I run three different scenarios. How would a wizard, and sorry, this is all coming off the top of my head, how would a class to the wizards or students who were in families from the dark arts, how would that play out to minimize their bias towards these Muggle students? Now I have a couple slides to kind of test your knowledge. So if Ron or Harry, Ron, and Hermione were making plans for the Battle of Hogwarts, what do you think would be the most likely type of analysis that they would use? And it can be more than one. Sometimes you can justify different types of analysis for the same scenario. Um, but I'm hoping that one of the analysis types kind of pops out at you. Scenario planning. Yes. That's the one that I thought would make the most sense because you're trying to come up with terrain information, demographics, geography, and you're also thinking about the environmental factors, the social factors. It's almost like a military analysis. Another one that I thought could work would be that pest, but the scenario planning is a little bit better just because you're running your scenarios and hopefully minimizing the risks before they even happen. And it's life and death. Okay, second scenario. Ollivander is considering opening a new location to sell his wands. Which type of analysis do you think he could utilize? I'm going to give people a second or two. Market segmentation, yes. Porters, market. Okay, so this is really interesting. And this is an example. You can do a different type of analysis for the same scenario. I thought Porter's Five made the most sense because you're thinking about your competition, internal, external, you're reading your markets, but also market segment could work because then he's taking his entire market base, dividing it up. So it's different ways to look at the same problem. I have another, I think I might have two more. Hogwarts Academic Council wants to analyze their strengths and their weaknesses in comparison to other visiting schools. What type of analysis do you think that they could use? Growth, the GSM. That would be useful, Bureau. That's a good one. Um, there's another one that they could use, SWOT. Andrew nailed it. So SWOT analysis was the one that came right to my mind. Their strengths and their weaknesses, the opportunities and the threats. The threats would be the other organizations. The GSM, I really like too. Again, it's my personal favorite. They're understanding their product line for that internal analysis. And I gave you a hint in the question, but I like Dawn's Vero. And the Vero was a really good internal analysis choice because it gives you your secret sauce. I think I have one more. Yes. Okay. Honeydukes wants to create targeted marketing based on their customer preferences to boost holiday sales. What type of analysis do you think that they could conduct? Well, I give everyone a second. Oh, okay. We're right on track. Market segmentation. That's absolutely right. With this, they could be dividing up their market based on who likes chocolate frogs, who wants more like a jokey type of a gift from the twins product line. Maybe you're even thinking about people who don't eat candy, but they have grandkids, and then they would think about chocolate frogs. Yes. You think about how would you target them the best? So if you have a younger market group who has a lot of growth, maybe how would you deliver it to them? Maybe technologically. And then I'm kind of thinking about like my grandma, she's not the best at using her phone for a QR code. So maybe then I'd be thinking, okay, it has high market growth, but I'm going to want to mail her something. So it's not only targeting that market, but figuring out what's the best way to communicate with them. Okay. that's almost the end of my presentation time. Before I wrap it up, I did want to thank everyone for joining me today, and I really hope that something resonated with you. I did want to mention that the Business to You YouTube channel is really beneficial. They break down larger business concepts into more digestible pieces. And if there's any questions, we have time for that. If not, I also had the question of which one of these analysis tools sounded most interesting to you or that you were going to try and do back in your library. I'm going to stop sharing though so we can see each other. Sunny has a good point that the different analysis tools fit different needs. All of them a Slytherin. I'm so happy you're here. That would be fun too to just figure out what house everyone's from. I have a theory that there's a lot of librarians from Ravenclaw. Oh, another Slytherin. Okay. Complete. Jade posted the evaluation in the chat. Maybe there's more Slytherins than I realized. I work also at Bishop Museum, and at one point our entire 11-person team were all Ravenclaws. Hufflepuff. Yeah, new approaches. Andrew said that. We have about 5 more minutes. If there's any questions from the presentation or things that didn't make sense, we also have time to go over that. Not just chocolate frogs. I think one of the hardest things, in addition to figuring out how to conduct the analysis and how it should look in the end, one of the hardest things is to get your administration to buy into it because you're spending your work time, which is also work money, to research or write this up or present this to them. Andrew, you had a question?
Actually, not a question, but first I just want to say thanks. This was great, and actually introduced one method that was new to me, which might be really useful for LIS, but definitely I could see for libraries. But I just want to say that I think the main failure that I've seen when SWOT didn't work is that people didn't present the research, and they just sort of like tried to think about what works in their short, looking without looking at other alternatives or what are the trends, and we tend to recycle a lot of the same bad things when we do that, or when it's combined with cost cutting in the end and everybody's defensive about it. So anyway, thanks so much.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Just like you tell your students, always remember to cite, put your research in there because that's your backbone that you have to stand against. And yeah, I hope that something helps you in your libraries or your work, or it helps you streamline or better allocate your resources from today's presentation.
Well, mahalo, Krystal. This has been very helpful and fun. And thank you everyone for joining and participating in this session.